just go to carlgallups.com. That's my website, of course, carlgallups.com. Click on anything that says Freedom Friday. Right there on my picture, there's a link that says Freedom Friday Radio. Click on that. It'll take you right to the Freedom Friday official international viral page. But in the meantime, we're going to jump right to the business here because I've been promising through the PNN network today that we would have Mike Zullo back on with us. And Mike, wasn't it just last Friday that you were with us? I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it feels like yesterday, Carl.
Well, I know, but the reason I asked that is because I remember that when we finished, I mean, we had you on for an hour and we covered so much territory, but there was still so much, in it, especially this Mike Evans story, and that's what we're going to begin with today. There's so many connections to this story, to what you now know. And I don't know, I'm not asking you to do this, but I don't know in the process of this show, you might even drop a little something that you haven't dropped out there before because there's so much that ties to what you now know about this whole fake birth certificate that goes to Mike Evans. And in just a moment, I'm going to explain to everybody who Mike Evans is. We've got clips we're going to play from some interviews he did, and then you and I are going to really delve into that. You mainly, because of course you have the official investigative scoop. But before we even get into that, I probably will get you to give just a brief overview of what we talked about last week, just an update on the potential CIA connections and what's all involved there and what has brought this thing to the forefront. Even Media Matters ran an article and all of that. And you know, Mike, I wasn't even going to say their name because they're a fake news site by the Soros machine and the Clinton machine and the Obama machine. But they did run an article on our interview and other people's interviews since then, because, and the point I was going to make is, once you went on InfoWars and once you went on Freedom Friday and a few others, and then people like Sharon Rondu at Post and Email and others were printing stories on it, it really did go viral. And other radio hosts around the nation that you and I didn't even know of were talking about it and pumped up about it and excited about it. And so Media Matters had to jump right on it and try to slam it, try to marginalize it, which is typical for the Obama bots. That's exactly how they work. That's how the fake news works. But the thing they did, I think, that was a favor to us, Mike, is that, I don't know if you noticed, but all through that article where they're trying to slam what you've been saying, what I've been saying, what we've been saying, they link to all these other interviews. So what's happening is, if you look at the comments under, a full 50% of the people that are reading that article are in favor of what you're doing, which means they're linking to all the other interviews they didn't know about, which means they're sharing them with all of their contacts, which means Media Matters, in trying to hurt us, probably helped us immensely, Mike.
Well, Matters, we know, is
a
operational arm of the DNC and the last line of defense on Obama and anything negative about Obama. But it's amazing to me. You know, we get hit by Media Matters reporting on what we had discussed, and I have a feeling, just like you pointed out, it may be starting to backfire on them.
I think it is, yeah.
And, you take what's currently going on in the news, and we're starting to see how corrupt the last 8 years have been, and things are starting to come to the surface. I mean, even if you're a Democrat, it's going to be a little hard to swallow it.
Yeah. No, I agree, brother. I think things are getting ready to be exposed. I think Trey Gowdy is on the war path. I think internal operatives within the FBI are on the war path. I think people in the White House are on the information war path. I think 2018, I said right before Trump took office that I thought that 2017 was going to be a year of revelation. I've told you that before. I've been on Jim Baker's show talking about it. I've been on Skywatch talking about it. I've been on radio across America and around the world. And I kind of predicted that, not trying to act like I was a prophet, but I just said, look, I think things are going to be exposed. Deep State's going to be exposed. Things are going to be exposed you've never seen before. All this trash talk and fake stuff on the Trump-Russian narrative. By the way, that kind of some of that ties back to stuff you found out in your investigation. We'll talk about that later on. But I felt like a lot of it was going to really start coming out this year, and sure enough, it has. And so I think you're right. I think this upcoming year is going to get deeper and worse for the Democrat operatives, for the ultra liberals, for the deep staters.
Well, Carl, when I text you, we'll do a little inside baseball. I often refer to you as prophet of old.
Yeah, I know, and he's just being funny, folks, because I don't claim to be a prophet, but he does.
Well, that goes right along with Father Time.
Yes,
but,
yes.
It is true. I remember you saying those things, and you are right. And I do really believe 2018 is going to reveal a lot.
Yeah, me too. And of course, go ahead.
No, it's coming.
Yeah.
When you have compelling testimony from witnesses within the DOJ or the FBI, like McCabe was just up there,
right.
And because of inconsistent statements he made in relation to other witnesses, now they want to issue subpoenas. Oh, that's starting to burn. The smoke is clearing and the fire is going to be seen.
Yeah. I agree. And plus, some of the stuff we know and where that information has gone and to the hands it's gone, and then the connections to it, some of it circumstantial, some of it hardcore evidentiary. I can't help but to believe that there are going to be some things really, really coming down the pike this year.
And, Carl, if I could just point one other thing out. I just really want to point out, because this infuriates me. If you remember going back, and I know you do, with the birth certificate, one of the things we were told by Congress people was they don't want to cause a constitutional crisis.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah.
Well, how quick do the Democrats want to try to impeach a president who committed no crime, no high crimes, no misdemeanors, except for calling out the truth? Boy, they're not concerned about a constitutional crisis.
Right.
They're not concerned about people rioting in the streets. So it's funny how this doesn't work both ways.
Oh, yeah, and it never has. But that's a good point. That's a good observation you made. And and of course, you and I said way back then that by not dealing with what you and I knew, and the sheriff, and I'm saying you and me because we're the ones on the radio right now, but other people that were officially involved, by not dealing with what we knew and what we know, that creates a constitutional crisis. I mean, dealing with it creates a constitutional difficulty, and it creates work for people, and it creates embarrassment for people who are complicit. Yeah, I get that. But not dealing with it is what creates a literal constitutional crisis, Mike.
Well, it does. And, you go around, look at Uranium One, look at sending, $1 billion over to Iran. I mean, come on, in the middle of the night in a big plane with a big pallet of dollar bills. Come on, you got to look at this. I mean, this reeks of criminality.
Yeah.
And because this was never dealt with, I believe that's why we're sitting in the middle of it.
Well, listen, 3-letter agencies that breached government offices, all right? We already know of a 3-letter agency, which is, I'm going to get you to kind of remind everybody what that's about, that breached Hawaii Department of Health offices and the University of Hawaii's historical archives and a server in Jakarta. And so we know all that. And we also know about DHS breaching the Georgia Department of Elections during the midterms, I think it was. In 2010, I believe that's when it was. That was in headline news, and it never came to a resolution as far as out in the public and having hearings and all of that. It just, that kind of went away, hush, hush, wink, wink. So, we already know about those criminalities and breaches, and that creates a constitutional crisis. If 3-letter government spy agencies can breach sovereign state government agencies for the purpose, perhaps, of conducting nefarious affairs in business, that's a constitutional crisis, Mike.
Well, it is, and especially when those agencies refuse to cooperate with Congress, who are supposed to be the overseers of agencies like that. And the fact is that there's no accountability. So that gives them the ability to run rogue. They hide behind classified status. They hide behind a lot of things.
Right.
And I'm not going to go into it just yet, but there is information regarding testimony before Congress that turned out to be completely erroneous and a cover-up, which continued this harvesting program illegally.
Wow.
And one of these days, I'm going to let that go, too.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, in other words, we started the show by just telling our audience there's a lot more coming down the pike. Here's what we're going to do, Mike. In a couple of minutes, we'll need to take our first time out. So why don't you take this couple of minutes and give literally a 2 to 3 minute overview of what has hit the news lately, what we talked about last week. And as soon as we come back from the break, I'm going to introduce this Mike Evans thing. We're going to play some clips, and I'm going to turn you loose on it.
Well, Carl, what we discussed last week was Mr. Montgomery, our informant, a former contractor with the CIA, who had information that he had obtained when he was working there for 10 years that proved that there were illegal breaches of citizens across the nation. In Maricopa County, under Sheriff Joe Arpaio, we were exposed to 151,000 names of individuals in Maricopa County alone that their information was illegally harvested. And when I talk about information, I'm talking about name, address, phone number, social security numbers, bank account, credit card information, a plethora of information. Mm-hmm. On top of that, there is evidence to prove that that information was used by banks that were in the process of committing bank fraud, laundering money, and suspected to be from drug cartels, utilizing these people's information when they had no accounts at those banks.
Right. And these people had no idea their name was being used and their information was being used.
No, and Carl, that's alarming because you got to ask, where did they get it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, just because you're a bank, that doesn't just give you the ability to go start running people's, TransUnion reports.
Right.
You have to have a reason for doing that. So where did they get this information?
Right.
Why was this information obtained? For what purpose was this information obtained, and how was it used? Well, we know what it was obtained for. It was to create sub-accounts in people's names that have non-existent accounts in banks to open up fraudulent accounts, and that's still going on. It's just coming out in the news that there's banks, again, are doing this. Mm-hmm. So there's a problem with this that is beyond just normal banking operations. There's something else happening with this kind of information.
Yeah.
And in the course of getting this information, we were also privy to breaches of the Department of Health Hawaii State Vital Statistics servers on numerous occasions right before the birth certificate or the phony birth certificate was released that showed breaches by governmental agencies retrieving information, sending that information to a known CIA server in Jakarta, Indonesia, and then that information at some point later on was then pushed back to the Washington, D.C. area, to the same computers that sent it forward. So, we have now a situation in Hawaii, aside from all the other circumstantial evidence, the analysis of the phony PDF, which was a manufacturing of direct evidence to conceal a crime. Now we have problems with the security of the evidence, the security of the information in the Department of Health electronic files themselves, and that makes it ripe for fraud.
Yeah.
And in a nutshell, that's pretty much where we are right now as far as...
as far as what you've released, the information you've released, yeah.
Thus far, yes.
Yeah, because you do have more information, but that's the information that was released that caused all the firestorm across the nation, which is good. I mean, there needs to be a firestorm, and there needs to be a congressional investigation soon, because as you said and I said, and then we're going to take a break. In fact, Mallory, you can go ahead and start the music. But what we said is that a congressional investigation could solve this whole criminal affair within a couple of days. I do believe, Mike.
Oh, Carl, this is so easy that if you're an investigator, this is like a godsend.
Yeah.
It is so easy that it almost takes no effort whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, when you open up the storage room, and I think it was Sheriff Arpaio said, man, I got a garage full of it. When you open that up and hand it to Congress, it's pretty overwhelming. I mean, it's a day or two, it could be solved.
It's a roadmap. It tells you where to go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of roadmaps, we got one when we come back, Mike Evans' story. We'll get into that in just a moment. But for right now, Mike Zulu is our guest this afternoon, and you're listening to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio. We'll be back after this timeout. You don't want to miss what's coming next. All right, folks. Yeah, we're back. Mike Zulo's back. Hey, Mike, so I can see the headlines now of the fake news. Investigator Zulo confirms Carl Gallups is a prophet.
Yeah, can you not see that?
I can see
That's
that.
exactly what they're going to say.
Well, that's right. Because, because we talk about that tongue in cheek, but they'll run with it. They'll take a soundbite, they'll put it in their headlines. I mean, I've had that happen to me before, brother. Sound bites of this show became headlines of fake news. But that's how they do it. That's how they do it. So I'm just going ahead and giving them the soundbite. Investigator Zullo confirms Carl Gallups is a bona fide prophet.
Well, I don't know about being a prophet, but if people go back and listen to prior radio shows and things that you said were going to happen, it's uncannily true. So, I mean, they can say whatever they want, but the facts are facts.
There you go. You confirmed it for the second time.
No problem. They're prophet of old.
Yeah, prophet of old, I'm telling you. Well, I work for a non-profit company anyway. So, okay, here we go. Here we go. So, Mike, listen, we're going to do the Mike Evans thing, and I'm going to kind of set that up, but this is apropos to this. This is connected to that. Explain to folks the problems with circumstantial evidence and with conflicting testimony of people with circumstantial evidence, the problems with it, and the legal acceptance of it, and how it works in an investigation, because that kind of ties into the Mike Evans story.
Well, circumstantial evidence is evidence that is not tangible or direct evidence, like the PDF file is direct evidence. It's a created, for lack of a better word, document utilized to represent something. Circumstantial evidence or circumstantial facts are other contributing things or statements made outside of the sphere of that direct evidence, but points you back into the direction of that direct evidence to start to bring about the logical conclusion. And what we're going to play next is going to be statements and then inconsistent statements made by a radio personality with regard to the birth certificate long form not being found in Hawaii. Now, from a legal standpoint, where a lot of people got all excited with this originally was the fact that, hey, he's backtracking, he's lying, this should be introduced into some kind of courtroom testimony. The problem becomes with that is, in law, that kind of information, unless it was made in a discovery process, an interview, or some other kind of formal deposition.
Right, under oath in court, something like that.
Yeah, those kinds of statements cannot be introduced as proof of truthfulness.
Right.
However, they can, or I should say truthfulness as regarding the statement itself. That would just be considered hearsay. However, those statements, news articles, news clippings, can be introduced to impeach the credibility of the witness themselves. And then there are some other exceptions, like I think California has an exception where it could be used. And I can tell you, the judge in the Arpaio civil trial, he opened up the door wide to take in hearsay evidence out of news clippings and utilizing it. So that would be interesting. But it also, these kinds of statements and prior statements with later on inconsistencies are roadmaps that investigators use and to put them into a course or a direction to establish the truth before, as they go forward.
Yeah,
they're relevant.
Yeah, that's the key. The relevancy of it is that they can be used to corroborate the roadmap upon which you are traveling and to point you in certain directions of investigation wherein real, hard, tangible evidence could be collected. And so this is kind of one of those cases with the Mike Evans thing. I know people that don't know what we're talking about say, well, what is the Mike Evans thing? And we're going to have fun with that, folks. We are bound by this clock, but we do have time. I don't know. What are we on here, 29? Yeah. Can we play the 1 minute clip as a teaser? Can we play one minute clip? Do we have time? I'm looking at my program producer. Okay, number 1. Number 11. All right. Let's go ahead and put, Mike, I'm going to put you on hold so you can hear it. Yeah.
Now, you also go on, if all this is correct, that you said that Abercrombie, the governor and your friend, now, quote, has egg on his face.
Well, you're putting, I don't know.
This is, you're quoted as saying that, so I'm asking if you said it.
He said he was going to torpedo.
Right.
these birth questions.
Absolutely.
And I thought, and as a governor, I thought if there was anybody that could do it, he did. Certainly, not being able to do so, it doesn't make the governor look good. I mean, does it?
No, he's gone into the weeds right now. Abercrombie told L.A. Times, New York Times, and I have the Tribune, and he claimed that he actually saw the...
But he can't make it public because of privacy issues.
Well, it's just nonsense.
Yeah. Okay. Mike, I think I might have marked that wrong. That's not the one I wanted to play first, but that's not the program producer's fault. But anyway, Mike, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. And we're going to set it up when we come back from the break. I'm just up against this clock here, folks. But here's the thing. When we come back, we're going to start with the first one. And you're going to hear Mike Evans, this Hollywood reporter who's syndicated around the United States on radio stations everywhere, telling a news broadcaster that he is personal friends with Neil Abercrombie, who was the governor during part of this birth certificate investigation of Hawaii, and how he calls Abercrombie's office, and Abercrombie says that there is no birth certificate in Hawaii. And then within 24 hours, he starts backpedaling, jumps all over radio. Somebody got to him. We're going to play all of that, but Mike has a backstory behind it that's going to blow you away. So when we come back after this next few little minutes, we're going to pick up with that from the beginning. Don't go anywhere. Now, so Mike Zullo, explain to us what we're going to hear. Just give us the historical setup for who this Mike Evans is, about what time frame this happened, and basically why it's apropos to what we're talking about. And I'll play each clip is about a minute long, and I'll play the first clip when you're finished setting it up so that people can hear his a part at least of his initial interview and what he said. Now, folks, please hear me at the Freedom Friday Carl Gallups at Facebook.com, freedomfriday.Carl Gallups. We've got the whole interview he did posted, plus his retraction interview less than 24 hours later. Now, remember, this guy's on syndicated radio that Mike Zullo's getting ready to tell you about. His name's Mike Evans. Mike Zullo, this guy's he's all over the nation saying this on hundreds of radio stations, okay? So, Mike, you set it up, and then we'll start playing the clips and go through them.
Yeah, Carl, to my recollection, it was before the 2011 birth certificate was released, long form by Obama. Mike Evans went on national radio stations. I believe the first one was in Minneapolis. He actually did go on an Arizona station right after that, and there's a number of others. I just never heard the recordings, where he alleged that he spoke directly to Governor Neil Abercrombie, and Abercrombie told him that there is no birth certificate for Obama in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Even went as far as to attest that he told him that there's no record of that in any of the hospitals in Hawaii.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And as he was saying all of this, and unbeknownst to him, like I revealed last week, there was information that was collected by Jerry Corsi back in 2008 that hospital officials were tasked with searching for this information, and they had no information about a birth taking place in any of the hospitals in Hawaii where they normally would have delivered children. My understanding is that there were meetings held by hospital administrators, and nobody had any information. Now, Evans would have no way to know this.
Mm-hmm.
However, he also goes on to state that Abercrombie did launch an exhaustive investigation and came up empty-handed. He did not have a long form, and that he refers to a written notation in some kind of archive, which was even suspect to Mike Evans at the time. Mike Evans makes these statements with absolute conviction and under the pretense of speaking directly to Abercrombie.
Yeah.
Within 24 hours, he then goes on and begins to recant the story. And he starts to retract the story, saying that everybody misunderstood what I said, and then he says that I didn't say I talked to the governor, I called his office, and what you're going to hear is him stumbling now, creating this inconsistent statement environment that only leads you to a conclusion that the recantation of his statements are not truthful.
Yeah, and when you consider that here we are all these years later, a single presentation of a hard copy out of the vault birth certificate from Hawaii. I mean, how easy would that be if I wanted yours, if I needed yours, if you needed mine, for some legal purpose, because you accuse me of not being a real American and a real preacher and a real radio host, and I wasn't even born here. How quickly could I solve that for you? you see. And here we are all of these years later. And so when we go back and listen to what Mike Evans was saying way back when he couldn't have known all of these things, and when you hear this, folks, this is going to blow you away. Now, I'm going to play this first clip. It's only a minute, and you're going to hear a radio host talking to him, and then all of a sudden Mike Evans comes in and says this. Now, who's Mike Evans? Mike Evans is a Hollywood reporter, Hollywood gossip columnist reporter who is syndicated. He's all over the radio, but he also claims he has dear friends, good friends. In fact, I don't know if it's in one of these clips, but you can go listen to the whole interview. He went to the inauguration of Obama. He was there with Neil Abercrombie. He's good friends with Abercrombie, knew Abercrombie back when he was a taxi driver in Hawaii, and then when he was a congressman, and now when he's the governor, and you know, he's just boasting, and Abercrombie's office told me this, and he said this, and he said that, and he promised me he would get that birth certificate, and then all of a sudden he backtracks. So you're going to hear all of this, and it's very important to the timeline, this circumstantial stuff this guy's saying, but it's important to what Mike Zullo really knows. So did I say that right, Mike, before we play it?
Yeah, I think that's
okay. Okay, good. So, Mallory, play the first one. Start from the bottom.
Well, Neil promised me that when he became governor, he was going to cut through all the red tape. He was going to get Obama's birth certificate once and for all and end the stupid controversy that he was not born in the United States. Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor at the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital and Queens Hospital, the only places kids were born in Hawaii back when Barack was born. There is no Barack Obama birth certificate in Hawaii.
Really?
Absolutely no proof at all that he was born in Hawaii.
Wow.
Now, he went out, he loves Obama. I mean, he purposely did this to get rid of that question. Now, got some egg in the face. I mean, now he admits publicly that there is no birth certificate.
Honestly.
Well, and Mike, the addendum to that is there's this story of there was a birth announcement, but it's been explained his grandparents could have called the newspaper and said, hey, our grandchild was born, and he didn't have to be born in Hawaii for that. So it's raising the issue again.
Absolutely.
After it seemed to be put to bed.
And I asked him, I go, well, do you...
Okay, well, that's it. The interview goes on and on and on, okay? And Mike and I are going to play some more clips. But so Mike, so you heard him say it again. He says, and I was talking to Neil, and Neil promised me. Well, to promise you got to talk to him. And then he says, and then I'm on the phone with his office, and Neil says... there's no birth certificate, and he purposely did this to settle this thing. He's speaking for Neil Abercrombie. Am I right, Mike, or am I losing my mind?
No, you're right, and you could also kind of, deduce from that comment that he has this personal conversation where he has promised that Abercrombie is going to put an end to this birther nonsense.
Yes.
And here's something else that's important. Focus in on this. He says he's in contact with the office. He doesn't say, I called the office and nobody called me back or nobody knew.
Right.
He's in contact with the office. So you would kind of take the impression that he's talking to more than one person
Yes.
at that point in time. And they are confirming to him that there is no birth certificate, that he can't find it. And you also take away from the fact that he's saying that Abercrombie himself told him this.
Yeah. And then he said to the radio host, he says, the conclusion is there is no birth certificate for Barack Obama in Hawaii. And you heard the radio host. There was two men, one guy in the background, the main guy, and a woman. And they're all going, really? Gee, oh my God, gee. Because what did Mike Evans just say? There is no birth certificate in Hawaii for Obama. How do you know this? Abercrombie has made it clear. I called the office. He said, he promised me there is no birth certificate. I mean, it's pretty clear to me, Mike.
Well, and keep in mind, Carl, this is going to be radio broadcasted before a decision was made to create a long-form certificate.
Exactly.
So he is taking it on solid fact, right from the horse's mouth. I can't find one. There's something in the archives, but it's not a birth certificate.
Right.
And we don't even know if the something in the archives is even real.
Right.
It could just been the cover story that they started to lay out very early on.
Right. And when you said that Mike Evans couldn't have known that they weren't making one yet, well, it could be, as you just said, that they were already in the plans of making one. And then here's Mike Evans out there telling the whole world that there's nothing there from which they can even make one unless it's, that would be criminal. So, I mean, this thing stinks to high heaven. You want me to play this second clip because it's part of that same interview?
Please.
Okay, let's play the second one, Mallory.
Well, and what's interesting about it is this guy attacked people who questioned that he was born in Hawaii just a few weeks ago.
Neil did.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, Neil and I are buddies, and during this whole inauguration, when I was in Washington for those 10 days, spent a lot of time with Neil, and anytime anybody come up and bring this up, you're right, Neil was almost militant about it. I remember him as a kid. He was from Hawaii, born and raised in Hawaii. So, needless to say, I think he was probably shocked more than anybody with the whole thing.
I mean, don't you have to produce papers that say, in fact, you were born in the United States?
So, wouldn't you?
You'd have to.
Well, there's been a certificate of live birth, but that's being questioned too because you don't have it. It's not the official birth certificate.
There has to be one at the hospital signed by the doctor verifying birth and a birth, but there isn't that.
Weird.
It's like a baptism papers. It's not worth the paper it's written on, really.
Well, Mike, how hard would it be to go back and find out what doctors were on then?
Well, apparently he can't find any of that, and it said that they were there.
Mike, the people want to hear from you, not me. I'm dying to talk about this, but you just unload.
Well, listen to the conviction in the statements. Listen to it. Neil is a buddy of mine.
We spent 10 days together, yeah.
Yeah, we spent all this time together. He actually went on C-SPAN with him when this was going on. It wasn't just these radio broadcasts. Uh-huh. But he's there telling you how emphatic. He's pointing to Abercrombie's motivation that he was going to solve this. He became militant about it.
Militant, yes.
But there's some things about Abercrombie people have to understand. Abercrombie made statements to the media that he saw Obama. He was there when the baby was born. Mm-hmm. Abercrombie later had to recant that because it wasn't true. Mm-hmm. He had to change the fact that he wasn't there. Then he goes to some obscure idea that he saw the family walking around Honolulu, but there's no way that could happen because Obama Sr. was gone by then, and if you want to believe the Seattle narrative, Stanley Ann Dunham took the baby at 3 weeks old, which is problematic, to Seattle to go to school, and we have information that contradicts that. Then he goes and says he remembers the kid playing T-ball.
T-ball in Hawaii.
Unless he was in Indonesia at the time.
Right.
He wasn't old enough to play T-ball, and he was gone until he was 10.
That's right. So now, Abercrombie is not the most honest dude in the world anyway.
No.
Yeah.
No, and he's got a personal motivation to solve this mystery.
Yes. Yes, he does. Yes. All right, let's play this third clip. Now, folks, here's what we're going to hear. We're going to hear this same Mike Evans less than 24 hours later. He is brought onto another syndicated radio program, and he's grilled about this. Well, not grilled as much as he should have been. Mike and I were talking about that earlier. But he's asked the question about his comment that you just heard, that he made less than 24 hours earlier. Listen to the backtracking, the obfuscation, and the muddying of the water. Now, we've got 2 or 3 of these clips. We're going to play one of them, probably take a break and let Mike talk about it and come back. But anyway, listen to this. 1 minute.
Now, I listened to the KQRS morning show, and I listened to you and those hosts, and you shared a controversy, or this controversy, rather, in a conversation that you had with the governor. Is that an accurate statement?
No, it isn't. If you listen to it, I just listened to it again. I said I talked to Neil's office. I didn't say that I talked to Neil. And I said, but the one thing that did come out is that there was no birth certificate at Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital or at the Queens Medical Center. And I said that's where it would come from. And I was actually calling to see what Neil had to say about that. But I was never able to get hold of the governor.
Michael, who was your source? Who told you that?
I read it last week, and it was on the Drudge Report.
I mean, but who was it in the governor's office that said there is no birth certificate?
I read it, and I believe it was the New York Daily News that said that their reports there was no birth certificate at the Queens Medical Center or the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital.
Mike Zullo, Mike Evans got a phone call from a man in a black suit. I mean, a visit, I think. Somebody got a hold of that dude.
Yeah, I mean, Carl, when you listen to that, you got to hear what he says.
Yes.
Now he wants to take away any direct conversation that he may have had with the governor. He wants to take that light off of the governor. But then he goes on to say that I spoke to his office, and what came out was So he's still saying that he got it from the office. He just wants to erase the Abercrombie part of it.
Yes.
All right, but what did come out? There is no birth certificate.
No, but that's right. They still have to admit that. And the thing is, though, prior to this backtracking, what did he say? I called the office and Abercrombie said, I spent 10 days in Washington with Abercrombie and he promised me, he said, I mean, you know, but then he gets on 24 hours later, he gets on and says, oh, I never said I talked to him and I read that on the Drudge Report. Go ahead.
Well, Carl, I mean, what was, you know, as you and I discussed earlier, what was kind of making my head explode a little bit, and not taking anything away from the radio host because he did clue into it, but the question that needed to be asked is, you said this yesterday, 24 hours later, now you're saying this isn't what you really said, and these aren't the chain of events. I would have asked him straight up, because as an investigator, you're looking now to generate other potential witness leads. I would have asked him, well, who contacted you right after you made all these statements?
Yeah.
Why are you now coming forward?
That's it.
You said this how many times repeatedly?
That's right.
On live broadcast, and now all of a sudden it's a problem. Who contacted you?
Yeah. Why? And if he says, well, nobody contacted me, then why are you changing your story? You've changed it.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah, you've changed it. Yeah, it's amazing. Let's take this time out. We'll be back with more. Mike Zullo, we've got some more clips to play for you, too. You're not going to believe what you hear. Stay tuned. All right, folks, hang on just a minute. I'm just looking at something here. Okay. Got some good news for you, folks. We're going to keep Mike Zullo on for the whole next 30-minute segment because time just flies, Mike. We're having so much fun, and we've got more clips to play, and we've got all the connections we've got to draw. Mike Shoesmith was due to come up, but I just contacted him, and he was so gracious. He said, no, keep Zullo on. I'll come on in another segment. So that's what we're going to do, Mike. All right, so Mike Zullo. I've got too many Mikes. There's Mike Evans, Mike Shoesmith, Mike Zullo. I'm talking to Mike Zullo now. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. I want to make sure. With all these buttons in front of me, it looks like a 747 cockpit. I may have pressed the wrong one. That's why I asked if you were there. Okay, so we've heard two segments. That was from the initial interview where he says, oh, he's my buddy. We're good friends. I've known him forever. We were in Washington together. I called his office. And he says, I called his office and Abercrombie says. Well, if I say I called Mike Zullo's office and Zullo says, that means I've either talked directly to you after calling your office or your office is speaking officially on your behalf. And I feel comfortable in saying Mike Zullo says because somebody in your office said so, right?
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
Somebody says so, and now I'm confirming it again. See, I'm not wrong. I just didn't talk to the guy directly.
That's right. And then he said, well, where did you get it from? From Drudge Report. Well, why didn't you say that in the first? Because he didn't. Somebody got to this dude in less than 24 hours. So we heard that. We heard his first denial. So let's play this second clip now, Mallory. It's number 44. This will be the second part of his denial. Now, folks, please remember, you can go listen to these entire interviews. We're not taking anything out of context. We're just giving you little 1-minute clips because that's all we can do on live radio. But if you'll go to freedomfriday.callgallups at facebook.com, you'll see you can listen to the entire interview, which is only about 6 minutes long, where he first reveals this bombshell that there is no birth certificate for Obama, and he got that from the governor. And then you can hear the next interview, which is about a 20-minute segment on his part, maybe 30 minutes, where he's backing up denial. Oh, I read it on Drudge. I didn't talk to Abercrombie personally. So here's the second part of the denial interview that we're going to play for you. If you want to hear the whole thing, go to freedomfriday.callgallups on Facebook. All right, play that clip.
And I listened to you and those hosts, and you shared a controversy. This controversy, in a conversation that you had with the governor. Is that an accurate statement?
No, it isn't. If you listen to it, I just listened to it again. I said I talked to Neil's office. I didn't say that I talked to Neil.
Michael, who was your source? Who told you that?
I read it last week, and it was on the Drudge Report. Well, Neil promised me that when he became governor, he was going to cut through all the red tape. He was going to get Obama's birth certificate once and for all and end the stupid controversy that he was not born in the United States. Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor at the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital and Queens Hospital, the only places kids were born in Hawaii back when Barack was born. There is no Barack Obama birth certificate in Hawaii.
Michael, who was your source? Who told you that?
I read it last week, and it was on the Drudge Report. Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor at the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital in Queens.
Okay, so I played that. That's the one we played right before we went to the break because I wanted this in context. So now, Mallory, cue up the next one, number 33, and this is the second part of that denial. So you heard the first part. No, that's not accurate to say I talked to him. I read it on Drudge. Well, you know differently because you heard it. All right, listen to the second part.
Now, I listened to the KQRS morning show, and I listened to you and those hosts, and you shared a controversy. Okay, listen. Mike, are you there?
I'm here, Carl.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Listen, I think this is a problem with what I sent to the production office. So that's okay because we still have clip 5.5, which is kind of a montage, and I think that will be even more powerful. And then we're just going to get into talking about how all this connects to what we now know. But apparently, clip 3.3 and 4.4. Apparently wound up being the same thing, and that happens sometimes. Okay, and again, that's my bad because I made the clips. I'm the one sitting here with the red face. All right, it is. We're coming up right at the top of the hour now. So, but Mike, we're going to hold Mike Zullo over to the second hour, and we'll have that whole first segment with him. We'll play this clip montage. Then, after you've heard that, you've got all the information about what he said, and then what he's. The denial, then we're going to tie all of this together to what we now know and years down the road and how all of this fits and how important this is, how serious this is. We'll do all of that when we come back right after this timeout.
The following presentation is controversial and may be offensive to some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Radio from the heart of America now.
And now, the Commander-in-Chief is back. Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
Hey, welcome back, Gulf Coast. Welcome back, America. We're at the top of the second hour, and we're broadcasting live, and that's a shame. I say that because when you broadcast live and you make mistakes on the air, you look like an idiot. And I made some mistakes in this last little section there, Mike Zullo. But anyway, we're going to un-idiot the thing. I pulled out my de-idiot machine.
Don't worry, Carl. I'll rescue you, brother.
I know you will. I know. And between you and my producer, you guys can make me look good and come out with like I've just been shined all up with some wax. But anyway, but here's the deal, folks. We do apparently have all the clips. Apparently, I piled them in on Mallory and had them numbered all wrong. And so I'm telling her, I'm saying, play this number. She plays it. And she says, I'm playing what you're telling me to play. And she was. But anyway, Mallory, I think I got this thing worked out. So what you should, it is me. It is me, not Mallory. But if what you should hear is the second part of his denial interview, Mike Evans' denial interview, where he's denying that he had any contact with Abercrombie, and then after that, I'm going to play another clip. It's kind of a montage where you just kind of hear it together, where he first says, "Oh yeah, I called his office," and he says there's no birth certificate, and then someone else asks him, well, less than 24 hours later, well, you said he said that. No, I never said that. No, I read that in Drudge. I mean, so you're going to hear it all together. Okay, so Mallory, play that clip. 5.5 will be played first.
Now, you also go on, if all this is correct, that you said that Abercrombie, the governor and your friend, now, quote, has egg on his face.
Well, you're putting, I don't want to,
this is you're quoted as saying that, so I'm asking if you said it.
He said he was going to torpedo.
Right.
These birth questions.
Absolutely.
And I thought, as a governor, I thought if there was anybody that could do it, he did. Certainly, not being able to do so, it doesn't make the governor look good. I mean, does it?
No, he's gone into the weeds right now. Abercrombie told L.A. Times, New York Times, and I had the Tribune, and he claimed that he actually saw the...
But he can't make it public because of privacy issues.
Well, it's just nonsense.
Yeah, that's important, Mike. You're going to talk about that in a moment, but let me go ahead and play this little montage. Then let's just come back and unpack the whole thing and connect it to what we now know all these years later. Okay, Mike? Mike Zullo?
Yeah, that's okay, Carl.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's go back. All right, play this next one now. This is the montage, so what you're going to hear, folks, is you're going to hear a radio announcer, you're going to hear Mike Evans saying, oh, he's my buddy, and yeah, he said this, he said that, and then you'll hear him come back and back up on it as we kind of montage it together for about a minute. All right, this is important. Listen to him.
And I listened to you and those hosts, and you shared a controversy, this controversy rather, in a conversation that you had with the governor. Is that an accurate statement?
No, it isn't. If you listen to it, I just listened to it again. I said that I talked to Neil's office. I didn't say that I talked to Neil.
Michael, who was your source? Who told you that?
I read it last week, and it was on the Drudge Report. Well, Neil promised me that when he became governor, he was going to cut through all the red tape. He was going to get Obama's birth certificate once and for all and end the stupid controversy that he was not born in the United States. Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor at the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital and Queens Hospital, the only places kids were born in Hawaii back when Barack was born. There is no Barack Obama birth certificate in Hawaii.
Michael, who was your source? Who told you that?
I read it last week, and it was on the Drudge Report. Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor at the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital in Queens.
All right, there you go. There you go, Mike Zullo. So now we've got all the clips played, and that little montage is just really condemning. And, folks, that's just a little 1-minute segment for this live radio we're doing. If you go listen to the whole interview, it'll make your head explode, won't it, Mike Zullo?
You know, Carl, when they hear the whole thing, I mean, it's kind of gut-wrenching. And later on in that, I believe Jerry Corsi is on. And Jerry does a pretty good job of really kind of grilling him. It's pretty evident. And let me tell you something what I believe. Because I had reported this years ago. I personally have discussed with radio personalities the threats that they came under for bringing up this topic. Yeah. I'm sure Mike Evans was truthful the first time out, and I believe that he got immense pressure on him to come back and recant this thing and to change it up because he's stumbling on the narrative himself.
Yeah. Really
and
badly.
That's the first indication that somebody's really lying to you is when they stumble over their own narrative that they only said 24 hours ago.
Yeah, and you know what else? And I want to make sure the audience knows this. Whenever you heard the stumbling and you heard pauses, I want the audience to know that for the sake of this live show, I trimmed out a lot of the silence in there, Mike. And you heard the live interview, so you know that, Mike. I mean, when this guy was asked a question like, well, you said that now he's got egg on his face, there was this that much of a pause, and then he starts stumbling. Well, but, and then another pause, and then, what I said was. So you're right, Mike. I mean, the guy was like a deer in the headlights. It was horrible. It was gut wrenching to listen to. I almost felt sorry for him.
Well, Carl, what's happening is at that point in time, he is now laying out a completely different narrative that he hasn't thought through, and he is literally now trying to put his answers into the perspective of what his new narrative is, and he can't because he's trying to remember what did I just say? Yeah. How am I going to take attention away from Neil because that's the pressure I'm getting.
That's right.
And I don't have to divorce myself from media reports that there's no birth certificate. I can't say the governor has told me.
Right.
That's the critical issue here.
Right. Right. Even though other mainstream media reported that the governor couldn't find the birth certificate.
Right, but this guy is out there on public airwaves now chanting this all across the nation.
Yes, exactly. All right, now that we've settled all that, and you've heard the clips with your own ears, folks, Mike, just connect all the dots, tie all the loose ends together. Tell people how this is connected and how it is appropriate and how it connects to stuff that you've been knowing for years and stuff we've just found out in the last couple of years. And so you just put the narrative out there now.
Well, Carl, if you base it on what Evans is saying, it kind of backs the original broadcast before his attempted, backtracking. Mm-hmm. He has information that nobody else was really privileged to. Mm-hmm. He got direct information he knew that the governor exercised all his power. Well, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
That means he used his power as governor to call up who?
Everybody.
His Department of Health.
Yeah, of course.
That's the first place you would go.
Of course.
Now, they can't find it. Then you know they checked their microfilmed archives, because after interviewing other departments of health executives, it's a locked vault key. You go in there, you pull it out, you put it in the machine, and you take a look. You know they had to go there. They couldn't find it, because if they found it on microfilm, they would have said it. Because then you could plausibly excuse the fact that a piece of paper may have been disjointed somewhere along the line. Nobody says that. There's no long form in the book, despite, I believe it was 2008 or somewhere along that line, the prior director for Keno, she said she saw it. She was the only one to see it. She says she saw it in the Department of Health Vital Statistics file room. But then we come to learn that there is no birth certificate in the book, right? Then we have a phony short form that's released, but then it's owned up to as being created by an individual who actually says he created it, but it's so suspiciously it has the correct serial number on it that would correspond to the phony document that's going to be released. How does somebody outside of that little circle of Obamas get privy to that number ahead of time? That's still a mystery.
Yeah.
Okay, but they release it. Then they release a purported real short-form birth certificate from the state of Hawaii, but we know of breaches into those servers at Hawaii that someone could have surreptitiously planted the digital information, creating a birth record using someone else's number. Then you have Abercrombie going on an exhaustive search. He can't find it anywhere. We know of prior meetings with hospital administrators that claim they can't find it because they exhaustively searched their records. And here's Abercrombie coming out and telling Mike Evans that I can't find it anywhere, that there's a notation of it someplace in the archives, but it is not identified as a birth certificate. It's not identified as a long form. And then lo and behold, we have a phony PDF copy of a long form. But even prior to that, then the cover story is the birth announcement. Now, in the press conference in 2016, last year, just about a year ago, with Sheriff Arpaio, I alluded to the birth announcements are there. I checked at in Washington, D.C., at the archives, and I saw them. I even went as far as collecting microfilm reels of the birth records from the Hawaii newspaper, from the company that is now in possession of them. But there's a problem with all of them. Is that section of the paper, there are two different newspapers that reported these, and they don't compile the list exactly the same. And when you look at the birth records compared to the two different newspapers, the only places that there is consistency is that once you get past that page, then they're all inconsistent. Preceding that page, they are all inconsistent. Now, when you start to check around and you start to determine how many copies of microfilms would be located in what libraries, there's only a handful. So those things are suspicious, but look, they're there. And I don't have the concrete evidence that they are implanted, but I wouldn't put it past anybody knowing what we know today.
Yeah.
Right? Then we have the Nordyke twins. She comes out saying that she was in the hospital giving birth to her twin daughters, and she saw Stanley Ann in there. But we have an audio recording of an interview with her prior to her death where she said she didn't know who was in the hospital. She was in so much pain delivering her children. So we have another problem with a narrative. We have a problem with the Seattle narrative. Just because Stanley Ann Dunham, there's some documentation that she went to college there, there is no documentation that Barack Obama was there as an infant. As a matter of fact, the only testimony to that is the woman that proclaims to be the babysitter, and when she was interviewed recently by us, she actually attests that, yeah, she did take care of Stanley Ann's child, but he was a large child sitting up on the concrete floor playing, a large child. Now, this woman has children of her own. You never refer to an infant as a large child.
Right.
And infants don't sit up by themselves. So we have a problem with that narrative. But there's nothing proving her to be in Seattle at that point in time with little Barry. That just didn't happen.
Right.
So now you keep going down this thing, and you get the production of the long form that materializes out of nowhere. It's immediately challenged. There's court challenges contesting the validity of the document. The document is never brought into court.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that.
All right, stop right there. Stop right there. We're going to take a time out. When we come back, we're going to talk about why was the long form never brought into court. That's important. You see how all this connects, folks, and it gets even deeper. We'll be right back after this time out.
How can one man bother so many people by simply telling the truth? Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
All right, welcome back, Gulf Coast. Welcome back, America. Welcome back, world. Welcome back, Mike Zullo. And folks, listen, we started this show a couple hours ago, hour and a half ago, just kind of teasing about me being a prophet or not, and Mike Zullo claiming me to be the prophet of old, et cetera, just having fun. But you'll remember I made a prediction, a prophecy during the show. I'm not claiming to be a prophet. We were having fun with it, but I made a prediction that very soon, and next year especially, but very soon, that things were really going to bust open in investigations and into the Clintons, Obamas, et cetera. Breaking headline news, Fox News exclusive. Jeff Sessions orders the DOJ review the report about Obama administration giving Hezbollah a pass. Exclusive. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is launching a review of a law enforcement initiative called Project Cassandra after an investigative report was published this week claiming the Obama administration gave a free pass to Hezbollah's drug trafficking and money laundering operations to help ensure the Iran nuclear deal would stay on track.
On the Capitol
Justice
grounds, right
Department
next
said
to
in
the
a
Ten
statement to
Commandments.
Fox News exclusively on Friday. He's directing an investigation into this DOJ official investigation, folks. So Mike Zullo and I are prophets. Just saying, Mike. Just saying. That's all.
Yeah, that's all right. I just want to be the prophet of young.
I know you're the prophet of young. I'm the prophet of old. All right, back to this. So go keep going with your narrative, connecting the dots, and why the long form birth certificate didn't make it into court.
Well, first of all, the long form birth certificate, the PDF file itself, or even a document, couldn't come into court. Number one, especially if it was manufactured, it didn't exist, or
At last, you can know the answers to mankind's most urgent questions and learn your destiny among today's events in the new, unprecedented work taking the prophecy world by storm. Gods and Thrones, Nakash, Forgotten Prophecy, and the Return of the Elohim by best-selling author, former decorated law enforcement officer, and senior pastor Carl Gallups. This changes everything. Available now wherever fine books are sold.
Reporters were only shown a photocopy of this thing.
Yeah, a JPEG.
Nobody really knows what it is, and whatever photograph from the White House or Savannah Guthrie, both don't display the seal. The seal is indistinguishable. You don't know what it is. We did the analysis on the work using forensics experts, and the document is just inauthentic. It's just not real.
Right. It's not worth the paper it's written on. It's nothing. It's a copy of nothing.
That's a copy of nothing. You don't know what it is. There's no original document. There is no source of origin. And it makes matters worse is when I went to Hawaii and interviewed or tried to interview Mr. Onaka, the director of Department of Health, and I could only talk to an assistant district attorney who came down, and I tried to just get her to confirm to me whether or not they created the PDF file. Oh, they wanted nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
They just hugged the state law saying there's information in our file that reflects that. Well, go back to the breaches. How do we know information was really put into the file?
Right.
How do we know they didn't falsify an affidavit from someone claiming Obama was born there, and now they're using that because it's convenient for them to use?
Right.
There's a myriad of ways they could have done that.
Yeah.
But the end of it all, the truth of the matter is, the public has never seen an original document. They have never seen an original long form, nor have they ever seen an original short form. No one has ever held it. No one has ever examined it. There's been no scientific examination of that document. There has been no microfilm. And you go through these chain of events, and the biggest factor in this is how is it that the long form birth certificate could not be found in a bound volume with 500 other birth certificates from that same period of time, including Johanna Ani's, our purported source document, including the Nordikes. How come they couldn't find his?
Here's the thing. How come it couldn't be found, listen to this, Mike, by the governor?
Oh, my God.
I mean, the governor. All he has to do is call up and say, I order you to produce this to my office or everybody down there's fired. Produce it tomorrow. That's all he had to do. He's the governor. He couldn't find it. Couldn't find it.
In in their state statutes, they have to produce it to someone who has a tangible interest.
Yeah.
That would be the governor.
Yep.
Right? I need to make sure of this. I need to make sure this thing is here.
Yep.
So that's all nonsense, and that's the court. A court would have jurisdiction to demand the release of the files.
Yeah.
And they couldn't have that happen either.
Yeah, and when you were saying a moment ago about how that assistant attorney said, district attorney said, well, all we can tell you is that the information exists in our records. Well, yeah, but whose is it? It's not his. I mean, now we know from the long form birth certificate. Now we know from the forensic analysis of 2 different international document expert examination companies who train law enforcement and testify in courts around the world. Now we know that there was a birth certificate produced from a legitimate one, from the ground up, from Johanna Anez, at least hers, they said, probably others. So what that attorney told you was not false. There is information at the Hawaii Department of Health from which they could produce a birth certificate. There sure is. They did it.
Legally truthful answer, but intentionally misleading.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, think about this, Carl. Obama in Hawaii, he was like a UFO.
Yeah.
There are purported sightings, but no evidence. Right. And then you have
grainy pictures.
Abercrombie, who comes out and says, I saw him as a baby, but oops, I was lying to you. Yeah. I saw him playing T-ball, but you know what? He was Indonesia. Right. You know, Abercrombie even makes a statement down the road a bit. He goes and visits Obama Sr. in Kenya, and he comes back and he makes this statement to the media. It struck him odd. He never asked about Barry or Stanley Ann Dunham.
Yeah. Yeah. And folks, I mean,
that's striking him as odd.
Yeah. And folks out there listening, I want you to hear this. Take everything you now know, plus this show today, go to your congressman and say, why haven't you done anything about this? Now watch. And then they're going to say, oh, but you know, but the birth announcements, but this, and but that. Well, that's birtherism. Well, that's right. Say, but wait a minute. What if all of this evidence was produced against Donald Trump today? Would you not do something? Do you think the news would do anything? Do you think there'd be a special counsel assigned if we had the same problems with Donald Trump's birth certificate as we're having with Barack Obama's and no one's ever seen it? What do you think, Mike Zullo?
Oh, my God. There'd be a lynching, Carl.
No.
Come on.
That's my point.
And think about this. I want to point something else to you. The selective service card, which we hardly talk about, which I think is almost more damning than this in a sense. Mm-hmm. You have documented evidence that Obama, in his college years, was on campuses telling people not to register for the draft.
Right.
And we're supposed to believe that he registered?
Yeah. And then when you do find a certificate, it's screwy, and you can tell that it's been fabricated. And then when you go back to get more information, the selective service shuts you out and says, we're not releasing that anymore.
Right. So the bottom line is this, look, you look at the tangible evidence, you look at the circumstantial facts, the circumstantial timelines, people's statements, people recorded statements in the media, their interviews, their composure during those interviews, their obvious cover-ups and statements, the fact that Onaka has never publicly came out and said that he inspected that document. Yeah. You have Fakino making that claim. Let's not, just touch a little bit of Loretta Fuddy, who was the one who released it. She's dead now, purportedly. Yeah. So nobody can do anything with that.
Mike, we got to get out of here.
Narratives in Seattle. Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah, you're right. We got to get out of here, Mike. We're gone. Okay. We're gone. Folks, do you hear this? Now you get it. And I predict there's going to be a lot in 2018 about this birth certificate investigation, probably before Congress. I'm predicting it. We'll see you at the bottom of the hour.